Sometimes the worst mistakes we make lead us to the most beautiful destinations, and this is a story about broken hearts and second chances, about three tiny souls who didn't know they were building miracles, and about love that bloomed in the shadow of death itself. Marcus Bennett was 32 years old and drowning, not in water, but in the weight of grief that had settled into his chest 3 years ago when a police officer knocked on his door with a hat in his hand and eyes that couldn't quite meet Marcus's own, and told him that his wife Sarah had been hit by a drunk driver at an intersection she'd driven through 1,000 times before, that she hadn't suffered, as if that mattered, as if knowing she died instantly made the hole in the universe any smaller, as if it changed the fact that he'd woken up that morning married with a wife who kissed him goodbye and told him she loved him, and went to bed that night alone with 3 6-month-old babies who would never remember their mother's face, her laugh, the way she used to sing off-key while cooking dinner, or how she cried happy tears the day she found out she was having triplets. 3 years had passed since that day, 3 years of being both mother and father to Emma, Ethan, and Sophia. 3 years of braiding hair wrong and burning dinner and crying in the shower where the kids couldn't hear him. 3 years of watching his children grow into little people who looked so much like Sarah it sometimes stole his breath, her eyes, her smile, her stubborn chin, and 3 years of surviving, which is not the same thing as living. And Marcus had forgotten the difference until the day his 3 4-year-old tornadoes dragged him into the wrong hospital room and changed absolutely everything. They were supposed to be visiting Marcus's father, Gerald, who was recovering from knee surgery on the 3rd floor of St. Catherine's Memorial Hospital, a simple 30-minute visit. But somewhere between the elevator and Gerald's room, the triplets had discovered hospital wheelchairs and decided these were the most magnificent toys the universe had ever provided. And the chase was on, with Emma pushing one at speeds that violated physics, Ethan riding in another with his arms spread wide like he was flying, and Sophia laughing with a sound like bells that was so much like her mother's laugh that Marcus felt his heart crack just a little bit more. "Emma! Ethan! Sophia! If you don't stop right now, I swear to God!" But Marcus's threat died because he was already doing everything, already running on 4 hours of sleep and cold coffee and fumes. And what else could he possibly threaten them with when he was already at the absolute limit of human capability? And the triplets paid him no attention whatsoever, because in their 4-year-old minds, they were helping. They were wheelchair doctors, saving lives. And, "We're helping, Daddy!" Emma called over her shoulder, her brown curls bouncing, and Marcus rounded another corner only to find all 3 wheelchairs abandoned in the middle of the corridor outside the oncology wing, which meant the kids had gone somewhere, and a security guard appeared, slightly out of breath, saying, "Sir, your children ran into a patient's room 547, and Marcus felt his blood run cold, because, oh God, they'd disturbed someone who was sick, someone who needed peace, someone fighting battles in this place where hope and heartbreak held hands in the hallways. As Marcus approached room 547 with dread pooling in his stomach, already forming apologies for his uncontrollable offspring, he heard something that stopped him dead in his tracks. Laughter, not polite or forced, but real, genuine laughter, the kind that comes from somewhere deep and true, the kind that sounds like sunlight given voice, the kind Marcus hadn't heard in so long he'd forgotten it existed. And when he pushed open the door, his entire world shifted on its axis, because there, in the golden afternoon light that streamed through the window, sat a woman who was simultaneously the most beautiful and most heartbreaking thing he'd ever seen. She was thin, desperately, frighteningly thin, with delicate bones visible at her wrists and collarbones, a soft blue scarf covering her head, and Marcus could see the telltale signs even from across the room. No eyebrows, no eyelashes, the aggressive march of cancer and chemotherapy written on her body like a story of war. But her eyes, God, her eyes were the color of honey in sunlight, warm and alive and full of joy, pure, unfiltered unfiltered, impossible joy, and Emma was standing on a chair beside her bed, chattering at breakneck speed about robot knees and grandpas and dinosaurs probably. Ethan had found a stethoscope somewhere and was examining a teddy bear with intense concentration, and Sophia, his sweet, quiet Sophia, had climbed right onto the bed and was curled against the woman's side, holding her hand and showing her a rock from the parking lot, saying, "This is a magic rock. See the sparkles? That means it has wishes inside. The good kind, the kind that makes sad people happy." The woman was smiling down at Sophia with such tenderness that Marcus felt something crack open in his chest, something that had been sealed shut and frozen for 3 years. Rachel Morrison was dying, and she'd known this for 11 months, 2 weeks, and 3 days. Known it since the doctor sat across from her in an office that smelled like lemon furniture polish and fear, and said the words, "Stage 4 pancreatic cancer." Aggressive, metastasized, 6 to 12 months, maybe less. Known it since she'd sat in her car in the parking garage afterward and screamed until her voice gave out. Known it since she'd gone home to her empty apartment, no husband, no children, no family except an aunt in Seattle who called every Sunday out of obligation, not love, and realized she was going to die alone. At 31 years old, Rachel had already lost more than most people lose in a lifetime. Mother to cancer at age 7, father to a heart attack at 23, 2 weeks before her college graduation, the fiancé who'd promised forever but left 6 months into her diagnosis because he couldn't watch her die, the teaching job she loved because chemotherapy made it impossible to stand in front of a classroom, and one by one, life had taken everything from her, until all that was left was a body that was betraying her, a hospital room that had become more home than her apartment, and the quiet, terrible knowledge that when she died, there wouldn't be many people at her funeral. Maybe a few former colleagues, maybe some kids she'd taught, maybe her aunt if the timing was convenient, but no one who would truly, deeply mourn her, no one whose life would shatter like glass, no one who would lie awake at night and reach across the bed for her and find only emptiness. She would die, and the world would barely notice. That's what she'd been thinking about when 3 small hurricanes burst into her room a week ago. That's what she'd been crying about. Not the pain or the diagnosis or even the fear of death itself, but the loneliness of it. The terrible, crushing loneliness of leaving a world that had already forgotten her. And then Emma had climbed onto her bed with a gap-toothed smile and said, "Hi, we're lost, but it's okay, because getting lost is how you find new friends." And just like that, Rachel wasn't alone anymore, because the triplets visited every day since that first chaotic meeting, Marcus bringing them after preschool, and they would burst into her room like confetti and noise and pure, unfiltered joy. Emma telling elaborate stories, Ethan sharing his latest scientific discoveries, Sophia curling up beside her, showing her treasures, rocks, leaves, a button, a twist tie shaped like a heart, and Marcus would sit in the chair by her bed and just be there. Sometimes they talked about his wife Sarah, who'd loved terrible reality TV and could make bread from scratch and had wanted 4 kids, maybe 5, about Rachel's mother who'd smelled like lavender and used to sing while she cooked, about the impossible weight of grief and how it never really got lighter, you just got stronger at carrying it, and sometimes they didn't talk at all. Marcus would just sit there while the kids played, and Rachel would watch him watch his children, and something about his presence made the room feel less like a prison and more like a sanctuary. 1 week after they met, Marcus came alone, the kids with his father, saying, "Thought maybe you could use some company, adult company, the kind that doesn't involve discussions about whether dinosaurs would be good at basketball." And Rachel laughed, surprised to find it came easily, naturally, the way laughter used to come before the weight settled in her chest. And when Marcus asked, "How are you feeling?" Rachel could hear the real question beneath it. How bad is it? How much time do you have? How can I help? And she answered honestly, I'm tired, so tired, the kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix, the kind that lives in your bones. And Marcus nodded, saying, I know that tired. And Rachel said, I know you do. I can see it in your eyes. And they sat in silence for a moment, two people who'd learned that sometimes words aren't enough, that sometimes the best you can offer another person is just witness, just I see you. I see your pain. I see that you're barely holding on, and I'm going to sit here with you anyway. Can I ask you something? Rachel said finally, and you can tell me to mind my own business if you want. And Marcus leaned forward, saying, Sure. And Rachel asked, Why do you keep coming here, you and the kids? I mean, I'm grateful. God, I'm so grateful. You have no idea. But why? And Marcus was quiet for a long moment before saying slowly, Because a week ago I was going through the motions, getting up, feeding the kids, going to work, coming home, doing it all again. I was surviving, but I wasn't living. I'd forgotten the difference. And then 3 tiny tornadoes dragged me into your room, and I saw you laughing with them. Really laughing. And you have every reason not to. You have every reason to be angry and bitter, and to tell my kids to get lost and leave you alone. But instead, you welcomed them. You gave them your If you could bottle joy, it would look like the next 3 months in room 547. Because against all odds, against medical predictions, against the grim timeline the doctors had given her, Rachel stabilized. Not getting better, the cancer was still there, still advancing, but not getting dramatically worse either, as if her body had decided to pause just for a little while to let her have this. And the hospital staff started calling it the miracle room, because that's what it felt like, a miracle. And Marcus moved a comfortable chair into Rachel's room and brought in a small bookshelf and filled it with books they could read together, while the kids brought in their artwork, until Rachel's walls were covered with crayon masterpieces of dinosaurs and rainbows and stick figures holding hands. A family. That's what they became in that impossible room, a family that met in the space between heartbeats. Emma decided Rachel needed to know all the Disney princesses in order of importance, which was apparently critical information, explaining seriously, so Moana is number 1 because she has an ocean friend and can sail a boat, and then Elsa because ice powers, duh, and then Rapunzel because she has really long hair and a frying pan, which is very practical. And Rachel listened with complete attention, asking clarifying questions about why Belle ranked above Cinderella. Belle had a library and books were important, and when Emma asked, "What about you? If you were a princess, what kind would you be?" Rachel considered seriously, saying, "Maybe like Mulan. She was sick and weak at the beginning, but she worked really hard and became strong and saved everyone." And Emma's eyes went wide, asking, "You're going to save everyone?" And Rachel said carefully, glancing at Marcus, "Well, maybe not everyone, but I can try to make the people I love happy while I'm here. That's a kind of saving too." And Emma threw her arms around Rachel's neck, saying, "You make us really happy." And Marcus had to leave the room for a minute, had to stand in the hallway and breathe through the tears that threatened to overwhelm him. Ethan discovered that Rachel used to be a teacher and decided this meant she needed to hear about every single thing he'd learned in preschool, chattering, and Mrs. Patterson said that caterpillars turn into butterflies, which seems fake, but she showed us pictures, and it's real, Rachel. They literally melt into goo and then grow wings, and that's basically magic, even though it's science. And Rachel nodded along, asking questions, offering her own knowledge, never talking down to him, treating his curiosity like the precious thing it was, until Ethan asked suddenly, "Do people turn into butterflies?" And the room went quiet, and Rachel asked gently, "What do you mean, sweetie?" And Ethan said, "Well, caterpillars die and become butterflies. Is that what happens when people die too? Do they become something else?" And Marcus started to intervene, but Rachel caught his eye and shook her head slightly, saying honestly, "I don't know for sure. No one really does. But I like to think that when people die, the love they gave stays behind, like seeds they planted, and those seeds grow into beautiful things in the people they loved." And Ethan thought about this seriously, asking, like if someone loved you and taught you things, those things stay in your brain even after they're gone? And Rachel said, exactly like that. And Ethan's little face scrunched up as he asked, so even when you go away, the things you taught us will stay? And Rachel's eyes filled with tears, but she smiled, saying, yes, always. And Ethan climbed onto the bed and hugged her fiercely, saying, then I'm going to remember everything, every single thing, so you never really go away. And Marcus had to step into the bathroom to cry. Sophia was the quietest of the three, but in many ways felt things most deeply, spending hours just sitting beside Rachel, not always talking, just being close. And one afternoon she climbed onto the bed and curled into Rachel's side, whispering, "Can I tell you a secret?" And Rachel said, "Of course, sweetheart." And Sophia said, "I talk to my mommy sometimes, the one in heaven. I know I don't remember her really, but Daddy shows us pictures and tells us stories, so I talk to her picture." And Rachel's heart clenched, asking, "That's beautiful, Sophia. What do you tell her?" And Sophia said, "I tell her about school and my brothers and Grandpa Gerald's robot knee, and I told her about you." And Rachel asked, "You did?" And Sophia nodded against Rachel's shoulder, saying, "I told her that we found someone who makes Daddy smile again, and that makes me happy because Daddy was sad for a really long time, and I didn't know how to fix it." And Rachel had to breathe carefully to keep from sobbing, saying, "The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of moments, some beautiful, some heartbreaking, all precious." And Marcus essentially moved into Rachel's apartment, sleeping on the couch while the kids slept in sleeping bags on the floor, refusing to be separated from Rachel even at night. And Marcus's father, Gerald, came by every day to help, bringing groceries and cooking meals and sitting with Rachel so Marcus could shower or take the kids to the park or just breathe for 20 minutes. And Rachel was still alert most of the time in the first week, still herself, reading to the kids, listening to their stories, helping Emma with her counting and Ethan with his letters and Sophia with her drawings. And one afternoon when the kids were napping and Marcus sat beside her bed, Rachel said quietly, "I want you to promise me something." And Marcus said, "Anything." And Rachel said, "After I'm gone, not right away, but eventually, I want you to fall in love again." And Marcus's head snapped up, saying, "Rachel," but she interrupted gently, "I mean it. You're a wonderful man, Marcus, a wonderful father, and you deserve to have someone to share your life with, someone who can grow old with you, have more babies with you if you want them, be there for all the moments I can't be there for." And Marcus said, his voice rough, "I can't think about that. I can't think about anyone but you." But Rachel pressed, "You don't have to think about it now, but someday. Promise me you'll let yourself be happy again, that you won't spend the rest of your life grieving." And Marcus took her hand, brought it to his lips, saying, "I promise, but you need to know you're not replaceable. You're not someone I'll get over. You're someone I'll carry with me, always." And Rachel smiled, saying, "I know. That's exactly what I want. I want to be carried, not forgotten." In the second week, Rachel started sleeping more, 16 hours a day, then 18, then 20, the windows of lucidity getting shorter. But when she was awake, she was present, fully there, making every moment count. And she recorded videos for the kids, one for each of them to watch when they were older, telling Emma, "Stay curious, stay loud, stay exactly as bright and bold as you are. The world needs more people who take up space and refuse to be quiet." Telling Ethan, "Never stop asking questions. Never stop wanting to know how things work. Your mind is beautiful, and science needs people like you."
telling Sophia, "Your gentleness is not weakness. Your sensitivity is a superpower. Keep being kind. Keep being thoughtful. Keep being exactly who you are." And one for Marcus, saying, "Thank you for teaching me that it's never too late for love. Thank you for showing me that family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's 3 tiny tornadoes who crash into your room and refuse to leave. Thank you for making my last months the happiest of my life. I love you. Take care of our kids." And Marcus cried for an hour after watching that, after hearing her call them our kids. In the 3rd week, Rachel stopped eating, and the hospice nurse explained that this was normal, that her body was shutting down, that they should just keep her comfortable. Comfortable as if there was anything comfortable about watching someone you love slowly slip away. And the kids understood in their way. They'd stopped asking when Rachel would feel better, started saying, "I love you" more often, started making sure every goodbye was said like it might be the last one, because it might be. And one afternoon, when Rachel was having a good moment, alert and clear-eyed, she asked Marcus to marry her, saying, "Marry me. I know we don't have time for a real wedding, but your dad is ordained. He did that online minister thing for your cousin's wedding, remember? He could marry us, right here, right now." And Marcus felt tears spring to his eyes, saying, "Rachel, you don't have to," but she interrupted, "I want to. I want to be your wife, even if it's only for a few days. I want the kids to know that this was real, that we were a family, that it wasn't just pretend." So Marcus called his father, and Gerald arrived an hour later with tears in his eyes, carrying a printed copy of marriage vows he'd found online. And the kids were the witnesses, with Emma holding a bouquet of dandelions they'd picked from the yard, Ethan being the ring bearer carrying Marcus's wedding ring from his marriage to Sarah, because Rachel insisted, said she wanted that connection to be honored, and Sophia scattering flower petals from Rachel's windowsill plants. And in a small apartment with sunlight streaming through the windows and 3 children watching with solemn faces, Marcus Bennett married Rachel Morrison, saying "I do" with his voice breaking, and Rachel whispering "I do," so weak she could barely speak. And when Gerald pronounced them husband and wife, Marcus leaned down to kiss his bride, and she tasted like salt and tears and goodbye. And Marcus whispered against her lips, "I love you, Mrs. Bennett." And Rachel smiled, that beautiful smile, teasing, "I love you too, Mr. Morrison." And they both laughed through their tears.